for the Airport's Racial Equity Advisory Council, REAC for short. Thank you so much for joining us today for a very important discussion featuring some very important people, and just excited for everyone to be here this afternoon. I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items. The first of which is if everyone could keep their volume on mute, as well as if you're not a panelist, to please keep your camera off until the Q&A portion, just so we can make sure to prioritize our guests. And then also feel free to utilize the chat at any part of this discussion to ask any questions that you may have or comments, etc. There will also be a Q&A session following the conclusion of the panel of the roundtable discussion, in which you can utilize the hand raising feature. If you look at the top of your, there you go, awesome. Thank you, Shelley. And feel free to ask any questions at the conclusion of the roundtable. With that, I will hand it off to the individual that has their hand raised. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah, now I have to figure out how to put my hand down. So anyway, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for taking time out of your schedules to join Philadelphia International Airport and the Northeast Philadelphia Airport's REAC Roundtable. We have a real powerhouse panel today, and I don't want to take any time away from the comments and things that they're going to share with you this afternoon. So I just wanted to mention that this is one part of a multi-pronged series that we're doing for Black History Month. And Black History Month is really just a small part of what we're doing each and every day to address racial equity issues in the Division of Aviation. I am thrilled with the all women panel. Can I say that again? All women panel that we have, including our moderator this afternoon, to address certain issues. And I also want to give you one quick preview. We recorded a podcast this morning with Lieutenant Colonel Michael Hales. He is the Director of Aviation for Delaware State University. And I just as a teaser, it is going to be a fabulous episode where he talks about everything from Delaware State's rich history with the Tuskegee Airmen, his career as a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel aviator, and everything that they're doing at Delaware State University and HBCU, by the way, for those of you who don't know that, to advance aviation and hopefully be a feeder for Philadelphia International Airport as well. So without further ado, again, I'd like to turn it over to Deatrice Isaac. Deatrice is our Deputy Director of Airport Procurement, and I can't think of anybody better to moderate the discussion today. So Dee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Jonathan, and welcome to our panelists. And welcome to all of you who have decided to join us today. Thank you for taking time out of your workday to listen to these panelists today, who I'm sure will allow us to gain some insight around our topic for our first racial equity roundtable, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity in leadership is critical to organizational success, and we are thrilled to have these three women here with us today to talk about DEI, how they prioritize it in their respective industries, and also to celebrate Black excellence. These women are awesome, and you will get to hear from them shortly. Shelley, as you said, we have an all-women panel today, and we are happy to start normalizing seeing women of color in areas of leadership. So thank you to our panelists, and I will introduce you briefly. First up, we have Sara Lomax-Reese. Sara is the President and CEO of WURD Radio, LLC, and the co-founder of URL Media. WURD Radio is the Pennsylvania's only African-American owned talk radio station, and she is credited with transforming this radio station into a multimedia brand. So thank you, Sara, for joining us today. Next, we have Eboni Wimbush, who is the President and CEO of Airport Minority Advisory Council, or AMAC. AMAC has nearly 40 years rich history and legacy of advancing equitable opportunities and maximum participation for minorities as well as women through the aviation and aerospace industry. So thank you, Eboni, for joining us as well. And last but not least, we have Nefertiri Sickout, who is a City of Philadelphia employee. Hello, Nefertiri. Nefertiri is our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the City of Philadelphia, where she leads the Mayor's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The office is pushing forward a dual strategy in partnership with city departments to improve both workforce and community outcomes. Welcome to all three of you. We hope that our audience leans in to hear more of what you have to say. We are sure that it will be important as well as impactful for us. So let's start with our first question. And I'm going to ask the same question of all three of you. The first question is, how would you describe your professional journey to your present role? And did you encounter obstacles? And if so, how did you overcome those obstacles? And we will start with Eboni.
First, I'd like to say thank you so much to the PHL team, the REACT leadership team, for inviting me to this really important conversation. And I too am pleased to see the powerhouse of women that represent this panel. So to answer your question, the journey to my current position really, like many of us, started with early exposure to a career that sparked my interest. And, and that too is my story. My mother was a flight attendant. She exposed me to careers in aviation. I had the privilege and honor to attend Tuskegee Flight Institute in the summer and fly under the instruction of Chief Anderson, that some of you may know as the godfather of Black aviation. And though I didn't pursue a career as a pilot, my love for aviation was born, and it really took me to the university that I attended, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and graduated there with a degree in aviation. But exposure is my story. I interned with FedEx Corporation. I began my career there, spent 9 years rising through the ranks, and then leveraged my skill set to join another growing industry in the energy sector, and spent nearly 14 years with Johnson Controls and Siemens in their energy solutions business, and ultimately moved over to a senior level government position in Baltimore City for about 4 years in both transportation and in the mayor's office. So in terms of obstacles, right, and things that I've experienced throughout my career, you can imagine as a young Black woman pursuing careers in predominantly older white male industries, I've had a few obstacles. I like, in my experience, I often call it the trifecta of biases sometimes, right? First, as a young woman growing up in the industry, and anybody can, early on in their career experience that as a Black person, and then certainly as a woman. So gender bias, age bias, race bias. Even after sometimes earning opportunities in many cases and being given, impossible opportunities, I've still been focused on how to overcome them. So some of my keys and some of the things that I'd like to impart with the audience today is, one, becoming extremely knowledgeable in the field that you're in, building credibility and respect. Oftentimes we get opportunities, and it's okay to get them and not be an expert, but it is our responsibility. And I have taken real pride in becoming extremely knowledgeable in my field. I think it's important to build relationships, and not only with people who look like me or think like me or come from the same place that I do. So what I've done in my career is really look to build relationships to help me see my blind spot, to help me provide guidance. And third is persistence, right? So we don't always get opportunities, but I've always raised my hand, whether it's a new job, a new project, a new panel to participate on. And when I'm told no, I figure out why. I ask some more questions. What can I do to be ready for the next time? And you know what I do? I raise my hand again. And so I think those three things have really helped guide me, promote me, move me in my career, and help me to, sit in the position that I am today. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Eboni. We're going to move to Sara.
Great, thank you so much. I too am really honored to be a part of this powerful panel. And I guess, you know, I've been doing this a long time, so where to start on the journey to give a snapshot. You know, really, I've been a Black media entrepreneur my entire career, which is coming up on almost 30 years in media. I started off as a magazine publisher, and actually my co-founder of the magazine that I started in 1992, her name is Valerie Boyd. She just passed away on Saturday. So I'm still like kind of grieving and dealing with the loss of someone who was very, very instrumental in my career path. Another Black woman. We started this magazine in Atlanta, Georgia in 1992. And we were 25 and 27 at the time. She was 27, I was 25. And, you know, I've been reflecting a lot about that collaboration, that partnership, that we just happened to run across each other and started talking and just had the, you know, youthful hubris to just be like, yeah, let's do this. And we did, and we published for about 10 years, and it was a nationally circulated African-American health magazine. At the time, you know, everybody's talking about health disparities and social determinants of health now because of COVID, but we were doing that in the early 90s. We were doing a magazine that every issue was focusing on the intersection of race and income and health and all of those things. And so, you know, we were a little bit ahead of our time, but it was a very powerful journey, and an important part of that journey was my family, because my father and mother, me and Valerie went to my parents and said, we've got this idea, you know, there are no Black health magazines that exist right now. Black folks are disproportionately impacted by every disease that exists. We die more quickly, we die more frequently, all of that stuff. So what if we published a Black health magazine? And my parents said, yes, we will help you do this. And so that was a really powerful start to my media career. Fast forward to 2002, I closed my magazine. My father bought WURD at the same time, and I started doing a show on WURD. I did not want anything to do with the operations of WURD. I was very clear. I never wanted to be a media entrepreneur or in that role ever again. That didn't last. In 2010, the station was really struggling, and my family asked me if I would get involved. I'm one of 6 children, and all of my siblings were in our healthcare business. I was the only one who was kind of on the sidelines, and I was the only one who had media experience, and I felt very much like I was like it was a dereliction of duty, of like family obligation and duty for me to have this media experience from the magazine and not stepping in to help a business that my family owned that was really struggling. And so I did, and I did it reluctantly, very honestly. And it took a very long time and with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to begin to turn it around. But, you know, I'm happy to say we are profitable now. It's been a journey. I've been running the station since 2010. Again, it was think pre-2020 when the racial justice protests happened, and really nobody was supporting Black media. My entire career, nobody was writing checks for Black media. That was just like, that just, you know, was not happening. So anyway, we persevered. So the obstacles I faced were many, you know, as Eboni said, you know, sexism, racism are real. I had a third, I guess, obstacle for me because my father owned the station. People assumed that I didn't know what I was doing. They assumed that I was just installed at WURD as a figurehead, and you know, they just kind of wait me out, and you know, so I had a lot of people go around me to my father and, you know, try and cut my legs out from under me. So, you know, lots of obstacles, but my takeaways or my guidance to folks would be, you know, really develop your own self-care practices, because this work, whether you're in leadership or whatever you're doing, the pace of work is incredibly relentless right now. And we're dealing with a lot of mental and emotional strains on us. So make sure you do something every day to take care of yourself. Know thyself. Don't let anyone define who you are and what you can do. Don't let people impose those things on you. Only you know what you can do. And so don't let other people's perceptions of you limit how you do what you do. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, two things. The last two things is bring your full self to everything you do. Don't say, okay, well, this is who I am at work. This is who I am with my girls. This is who I am with my kids. Just bring your full self to everything, your work, and be confident that your full self is enough, and it's not too much. It's just right. And the last thing I'll say is, it's so important when we're so busy all the time to find space to there's a term, being on the dance floor versus being on the balcony. And so take time when you're so heads down to get off the dance floor and into the balcony so you can really see the broader scope, the broader picture of what you're doing and how you fit into the bigger picture, because then you really know your value. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you. Nefertiri.
Hi. Yeah, and I just want to echo my panelist sentiments and thanking you and Deatrice and the airport and Shelley for having us on today. I would say that in terms of my career journey, it really was born out of adversity. That is, everyone does not generate their career out of struggle. Some people come into or start their career from a different place, but many of us definitely start our career out of adversity, and that was my case. I was born to a single mother, born in New York, raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and truth be told, I grew up in the 80s during the epidemic of crack cocaine, and seeing that play out in my community with drugs and prostitution and crime and all of that while I'm in elementary school. But I was born to a very loving and tight-knit family, and so even though I was being raised in this environment, I was sheltered from it at the same time because I had a family that was very loving and very nurturing. And so I, ultimately did not become a statistic. But at a very young age, it was just imprinted on me that there's a difference with regard to children, with some children being born into situations that lock them into generational poverty, and some children being born into conditions where they have more opportunities and advantages for success, right? So even though I was born into this place where conditions and statistics would push me into one outcome, I had a family that was very loving and supportive and nurturing that allowed me to pursue a different path. But at a very young age, I wanted to dedicate myself to a career that no matter where you are born or who you are born to, you have the opportunity for success. And so that was my mantra, that was my charge from a very early age. To sum it up, children were my focus. I went to Clark Atlanta University. I focused on children. I went to George Washington University. I got a master's in infant education. I taught Head Start preschool for a couple of years. I went to Teachers College. I got a second master's degree in developmental psychology. I focused on child and family policy. But to be honest with you, the door never opened for me to be that policy, guru about children and families and poverty. And I will be forthcoming with you. I feel like I was locked out of that career path because I didn't look like the people that occupied those seats, right? I didn't speak like them. I didn't wear pearls. in my ears. You know, I didn't have the culture. I came from a very different community. So that door to be that child and family policy guru that I really wanted to be, it never materialized. So after all of those experiences and finally working in a child welfare organization here in Philadelphia, I said, let me go to law school, right? Maybe law school is the place that will give me access to power and the circles that I need to access to change structures and systems. So I eventually went from focusing on children, which was my passion, to thinking about the systems and the structures that impact children and that impact parents and that impact families. And so coming out of law school, I had the opportunity to work at a law firm for 8 years. I did commercial litigation, and then I had the opportunity to join the Kenney administration in 2016, came on board and have been working here to support the Kenney administration around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But in just really listening to Sara and listening to Eboni and to those experiences and dedication from very early on, I think we share the same, you know, perspective into being dedicated around service, a career in service, and just thinking about all of us have faced adversity in our different ways, and what grounds us to push through that adversity. For me, it's faith, you know, is believing in a higher power, believing that, you know, we march to this overarching frame of justice, and just, you know, pushing through. Relationships definitely matter, but faith goes a long way for me.
Wow, ladies, thank you so much for being so very transparent and sharing your experiences with us, your very personal experience and background. I'd like to direct the next question to Sara. What recommendations would you offer organizations interested in improving work experiences and professional growth outcomes for people of color, women, and other historically marginalized groups? You're on mute, Sara.
Oh, I thought I clicked it. Thanks. That's like the phrase of
That's, yeah, I say it at least 5 times a day.
I know, right? So I think that I really believe that so much of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, however we describe it, is really about self development, and you know, this notion of know thyself. I think I might have said that when I was talking before. I'm a big meditator, and there's a meditation teacher named Ruth King. She wrote a book called Healing Rage. She's a Black woman, and she says racism is a heart disease. And to me, I think that for us to become the world that we want to be, we need to do the work. You know, we can externalize a lot of things, but I think that understanding American history, and I'm not going to call it critical race theory or any buzzword, because it's not, I mean, that's a political term, but it's really like to really understand the origins of this country and the policies, the legal frameworks, the healthcare decisions, the educational, to really like become a student of American history. To me, that's the first way to become an anti-racist organization. Because if you really look at the truths of this nation and how, you know, racial oppression was at the foundation of the economic engine that grew this country, you know, it changes the way you look at everything. And so I really believe that look at, you know, who is your friend group? Like, do you have diverse friends? Like, what you do, just like I said before, you know, bring your whole self. Like, we tend to compartmentalize ourselves. Oh, we're going to do diversity work now, and so I'm going to check off this box and this box and this box. No, like, what is your life like? How diverse is your life? Do you have people who are close to you who don't look like you, don't believe like you, don't, you know, sound like you? Or are you just doing diversity when you come to your job, and then you go home to your, to your real life. So I think that getting more personal about this kind of work and being prepared to do the work on yourself. And we all have work to do, because as Black people, we're indoctrinated into anti-Black racism too. It's in the air. It's deep into every system that exists in this country. So we're suffering from some of the same biases and dysfunctions as well. So we all have to do the work. So I would say, I could give you more, a more corporate answer, but I'll stop there, and maybe I'll circle back with some of the more, corporate suggestions.
No, we like that answer you just gave. That was perfect. Thank you so much. Excuse me. The next question goes to Eboni. In your work, what are the top DEI challenges and your organization wants to address?
Thanks again for that question. So you gave a brief about our organization at the beginning. I'll just, for those of you that may not be familiar, AMAC, Airport Minority Advisory Council, for more than 38 years, we have been the only national nonprofit focused on and dedicated to advancing the full participation of minorities and women in both employment, and workforce, and business opportunities throughout the aviation industry. Our challenges, which is really interesting, the challenges from the time that our organization was created to the challenges today are the same. And that's around diversity in the workforce in this industry, and diversity in having business opportunities. And so definitely progress has been made, but there's still a lot of progress to be made, right? On the workforce side, AMAC is hard at work, really trying to build that diverse pipeline of women and minorities so that they participate in this wonderful industry that the audience calls work every day. We have a foundation, and through that foundation, we are supporting young people in their educational journey. And, we are focused on doing more there, but we do support college students in their educational journey through scholarships. And I would encourage the audience to take a look, and if they've got children or, or neighbors, get them interested in this career path, and share with them the scholarship that we provide. It's open right now. In the professional journey side, we are trying to ensure that people are ready, people are mentored, people have exposure. And we developed this wonderful program that we just launched last year, and really working hard to build it up, but it's called AMAC Builds Careers, and it really helps aviation professionals grow in every phase of their career. So it starts with, hopefully we can provide scholarships and then internships. So internships is a part of that program. And then when people are, in their jobs a few years, we've got a mentorship program. I told you, for me, especially navigating careers in which there are not a lot of people who look like me, and careers that, I stepped into an energy career without knowing a bit about energy, right? So really having to catch up. But we have mentorship programs. And finally, for people who are further along in their journey, there's a fellowship opportunity that's open today. And I would say, we all talk about wanting to advance or wanting to do better in our careers in the positions that we're at, but we don't put ourselves out there. And I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that's part of what we have to do. And so at AMAC, we're working to do that. On the business opportunity side, again, we are trying to work to build capacity for business owners, trying to provide access. So it's not just about building capacity and training up. It is access, right? I had an interesting call with some of my members the other day in another industry association, and there was this conversation about training, and And this was a president of a company that's been in business for 20 years. He said, we don't need training. What we need are opportunities. We need sponsors. We need people who are willing to look at the strength of our organizations, look at the work that we've done, and give us an opportunity, right? And so beyond training, but providing that access, we're working hard at that. And then finally, advocating. When I stepped into public service in Baltimore City, one of my directors said, you know, our legacy has to be in policy because that is what outlives us, right? Policy outlives however long we're going to be in these positions. And so at AMAC, we're advocating on behalf of our members, looking at regulations that really impact them or burdens that prevent them from growing and thriving. And I'll finally say this, all of these challenges, they can't be done alone, right? It takes collaboration. Someone said that earlier in the conversation. It takes collaboration with local governments and airport partners like the City of Philadelphia and PHL. It takes community organizations. It takes government agencies. It takes each of you who are on the phone, or on the Zoom call. The fact that you showed up to listen to this conversation says that you're interested. Maybe you're interested and you're not on the dance floor, but you're in the balcony, right? I like to say, get in the game. There is a role for everyone to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce, with opportunities, and we continue to look for those conversations.
Thank you, Eboni. Thank you for that. I want to remember that preparation, but also access and opportunities. I like that. Nefertiri, so now to you. Can you just briefly speak about the significance of your standing up a DEI strategy throughout an entire city, and the city being Philadelphia?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, I was listening to Eboni and listening to Sara, and just thinking about some of the comments that they made. Sara speaking about history, right, and knowing history. When I was in law school, and I'm going to get to the answer to your question and help you breathe. When I was in law school, I took a course called American Legal History, and it traced the history of the country from a legal place from its inception to present day. And I remember we were studying about the Constitution, and it was really interesting, think about the Constitution. The Constitution had a clause in it called the Fugitive Slave Clause. And so it was essentially, if Black people who were enslaved in the South went to, an area, a jurisdiction where there was no slavery, and they would be free, whether or not the slave owner could go to that jurisdiction and essentially capture them and bring them back, to slavery. And I know that's going way back into history, but it really was the spark for the Civil War. It really was the spark in terms of when Abraham Lincoln was president, and trying to keep the union of this country from those states who wanted to succeed from the union because they wanted to continue slavery in those states, that were free states. And so it really had a direct impact on the fabric of this country, even, thinking about history and, some of the Supreme Court decisions that counted Black people as 3/5 of a person, right? We've come so far, from that legal precedent. But when you think about the civil rights era, which was in the 60s, it's not like we're 100 years removed from when we got the right to vote and when we got all of our civil rights, right? So it's been a while since, the Emancipation Proclamation, but it hasn't been a 100 years since we've had our civil rights. And so, you know, history really grounds you and help you to understand, like, what's the struggle? What is the fight that we are actually, you know, pursuing in terms of equity and equality and institutional and systemic structures in terms of better outcomes in our workforce and our communities. And it's all our fight. It's not just Black people, right? It's LGBTQ plus, it's people with disabilities, it's women, it's all of that. Like we're united in that. But I think, you know, in terms of our citywide strategy, what it was born out of was racial equity, because race was just that predictor that cut across all of these different demographics in terms of oppression and marginalization. So you could be a person with disability, or you could be LGBTQ plus, but that Black, you know, facial discrimination really cut across all of these different demographics. And so just in terms of thinking about standing up this citywide strategy in the city, we followed this model that was put out by the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, GARE, and they had really three core areas that they looked at when you're standing up a citywide strategy. One was workforce, 2 is procurement, and 3 is budget, right? So when you think about workforce, you want to see diverse, inclusive representation at all levels of government, at all levels of leadership, across all positions, because what results from that isn't just that you have better numbers, but you have better understanding and you have better decisions. You have better decision making because you have more diverse understanding and representation, which ultimately should lead to better outcomes. And then thinking about procurement and contracting, when Sara was talking about, you know, nobody's writing checks, you know, for the radio, like really thinking about the economic power of contracting with the city and access to hundreds of millions of dollars to grow economic wealth in the city. So making sure that we have equity in contracting and procurement opportunity. And then lastly, our budget. We have billions of dollars that we spend and that we invest in terms of our operating budget and our capital budget, and making sure that we are intentional in terms of how we invest with resources with respect to a racial equity lens. On top of that, very briefly, I would just add thinking about infrastructure, which you all are doing here at the airport with Shelley and REAC, and really making sure that you have an executive team that is committed to this, that is intentional, and that is creating space for this work. And then lastly, I would close, you know, our focus in the city has been institutional and structural, but equally important to that is culture. And you have to create an organization where all employees feel that they are coming to a work environment where they are respected, where they are valued, and where they are treated with a level of dignity, you know, that is a basic commitment and component of our structure. And we fell in that in a lot of places. We need to do more work on the culture side, and we definitely are committed to that in terms of providing the resources to develop a culture where all employees feel respected and valued.
Thank you, Nefertiri. Thank you. We're going to move to our last question, and I hate to see this coming to an end, but for the last question, and it's directed to all of you, we are all faced with some very serious challenges in the world today, whether it's social or political or public health challenges. In the midst of all that's going on, what inspires you? What helps you to keep going to do this and pursue this DEI work? What motivates you in spite of everything that's going on? And I'll start with Eboni.
So I'll have to say that I need to take Sara's advice more and really focus on self-care, because she is right. This work is so critical, but it sometimes it takes a lot out of you. But I am reminded of something that my mother used to tell me all the time growing up, still tells me today. to whom much is given, much is required. I'm reminded of that. I hear her. It's so crazy. I hear her all the time telling me that. And so, though I've faced challenges and obstacles, and I could have gone on and told you guys stories that would leave mouths open, I've been poured into. As Nefertiri said, my family, they have loved me. They have told me how great I am, and they have built a confident young Black woman. I have been invested in professionally with the corporations and the entities that I've worked for. So I find myself in this position because of all of that and a higher power above. I guess what sustains me is really trying to realize AMAC's vision. AMAC's vision is to create economic equity, access, and wealth for minorities in aviation and aerospace. That is a big task, but it does push me. It helps me feel the urgency of the moment. What sustains me is the past and the future. Two quick stories. So yesterday, a congresswoman out of Georgia, her name is Nikema Williams, she introduced a resolution on International Black Aviation Professional Day. So International Black Aviation Professional Day. And Senator John Ossoff, he introduced the companion legislation. And so AMAC got the opportunity, and I had a chance to read over the resolution that was going to be introduced and comment on it and provide some comments. But as I read it, and there were all these whereas clauses, right? Whereas. But it outlined the contributions, a significant contribution that Black people, men and women, have had to the aviation industry. And so I'm reminded that I stand on broad, square shoulders, and I have to work every day, every minute, honestly. I feel compelled to, so that the next generation of people can say the same thing. I do believe it is my responsibility. And then finally, what sustains me is the future, right? So I said I was young, but I'm a little older than just some of those young people. I want to be in our emerging leaders group, but they said I'm not quite in that age range. But what sustains me really is the future. So yesterday evening, I had the opportunity to give remarks at an event at Baltimore Washington Airport. And the event was for micro businesses. And so these young entrepreneurs, women and minorities, 100% in this class, small business owners, they get this opportunity to participate in an internship and in this concessions program. But to hear their stories and to hear their journey and to hear their passion, to hear their commitment, to see the work that they're doing, that's really what sustains me. It sustains me to come every day, in the morning when I wake up, when I'm, at night, I sometimes get out of bed and have to write a few things down because the future is bright, but we have a lot of work to do. And then I'm going to remember what Sara said about self-care and fit some of that in the intro.
Thank you. Sara?
Sure. So I guess, first of all, I don't see what I do as DEI work. To be to own and a Black media organization that serves and centers Black people in a city like Philadelphia, which has a large, Black community. That is kind of, like I said earlier, my whole career has been around, building media businesses that center and serve Black people. And so that's really what inspires me. It's hard. It's hard as hell. It's very, very hard. And And it occurred to me because I'm in this fellowship at Stanford, and we have to do a lot of like self-reflection and writing and stuff. And so it occurred to me that the challenge that I've always had in this work is that we are serving a community that has not really been valued by the people who have the money, corporations, and so, you know, WURD is we have this promo that says, you know, we're unapologetically permanently Black talk media, you know, and we've been at this for we bought the station in about 2002, so almost 20 years. And before the 2020, you know, global racial justice protest, when all these corporations said, oh, snap, we need to support Black businesses, we need to support HBCUs, we need to support Black media. We've been at this for a really long time, before it was fashionable, before it was popular, before anybody was writing checks. And so that is what inspires me, that we know that this work matters. We know that what we do at WURD matters because we're connecting people who have been locked out and left out to information and resources and opportunities. We are that bridge. We're that connector. And so, you know, Philly's, we all know this is the poorest big city in the country. You know, we've got a high illiteracy rate. I mean, we've got all kinds of marks that are holding us back. But we also have incredible people who know and love this city and, you know, are deeply, deeply committed to trying to figure out how we do better. And so trying to make sure that I make WURD as strong as it possibly can be so that we can continue to give voice to people who have not had access to opportunities and outlets like WURD. And just to make sure that we're doing everything that we can possibly do to connect people to information, opportunity, and resources so that our community is not always on the sidelines in a city that is very well resourced. So, but somehow those resources don't get to our communities. So anyway, really, really encouraged by just the work. And even though sometimes it feels like we're going backwards, you know, I often say young people are what inspire me, Eboni. But, you know, I just did a TV thing, and we were talking about the bomb threats against HBCUs. And yeah, it's young people who are at the, you know, behind a lot of these bomb threats. You know, 16-year-old, and the way they categorize them, tech-savvy juveniles. And meanwhile, you know, our 16-year-old Black boys are, you know, seen as rabid animals, you know. So anyway, I'll stop there and yeah, hand it to Nefertiri.
Thank you. I'll be brief. It's definitely a tough question. I think, especially in light of the last 2 years, you know, in the city with the pandemic and the way it came and, you know, exacerbated existing disparities and George Floyd and just everything that we've seen. It's been really, really tough, you know, sitting in this space and trying to stay motivated and inspired and committed. In terms of what sustains me, I will say two things: personal and professional. Personally, I count my blessings, right? I count my health. I count that I have shelter, that my bills are paid, that I have a healthy baby, a husband. So there's nothing that I should complain about. I've gone through trauma, I've gone through adversity, but when I look at the environment around me, I'm blessed. And so I have to acknowledge and count my blessings. So that sustains me. And then the second thing is really what Sara spoke to. There are a tremendous amount of people that are dedicated to improving the conditions of Black people, of other communities who are marginalized and underserved. There are a good number of people that are really committed to it, on this panel, in the city, at the airport, you, Shelley, Jonathan, everybody who put this panel together. And that sustains me, because you cannot do it alone. It is so overwhelming. It can feel so burdensome that you just want to be like, you know what? There's no hope. And without hope, you're done. And so the only thing that sustains me is I tap into the energy, and I'm appreciative of everyone around me who's pushing to advance better outcomes for our community. And that is what helps me to keep going as well.
Wow, ladies, I have to thank you. I am utterly blown away by your answers, by your candidness, and your willingness to share with us today. From Eboni, looking at the past, the present, and the future, and letting all of that inspire you to keep going. Thank you for that. And Sara, out of everything you said, what I heard was, I am not new to this. You've been doing this for a long time, and you're committed to this work. And we appreciate you for that. And then Nefertiri, counting your blessings. We all know that an attitude of gratitude takes you a long way. And then also just being inspired by the commitment of others. And so we thank you for sharing. I hope the audience out there is as inspired as I am to really lean into doing some good work. Sara told us to make it personal. It's not just about these catchphrases and the phrase of the day, whatever we call it. We know that we need to do some self-reflection and work on our own to help make this world a better place. It may sound like a cliche, but we're inspired to at least try, right? So we're going to open it up for Q&A. And I know we're a little behind schedule, but we didn't want to cut anyone's answer, cut you short. And I'm sorry that we don't have more time, but we do want to get us some questions in. So Jonathan, are you there with questions ready?
I am here. We don't really have any questions in the chat, just
Okay.
some words of affirmation and appreciation, which is definitely well received and acknowledged. But at this point, please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question at this moment.
And while we're waiting for questions, I will also say to the audience that we will make everyone's bio, their complete bios, available to you so that you can read about them in their entirety. We really want you to know their stories beyond what you heard today. Very inspiring, ladies. Thank you. It's a lot of positivity going in the chats, but no questions.
And I put this in the chat, but I'll come off mute and say this. It is really important that you know, Shelley, the leadership team at PHL creates the space for this conversation. It's just really important that happens. So thank you very much.
And it's uncomfortable. It's not easy. Eboni, Shelley, you know, it is not intuitive. It's difficult, and it can be very uncomfortable. But creating the space, you know, to acknowledge systemic inequity, and to try to problem solve together, you know, the path forward out of that. It's just what is so meaningful and incredible. So, you know, I share that sentiment as well, and thank the airport leadership team for this opportunity to share out, and for all of the work that preceded us and that will continue going forward.
Thank you.
Well, we're continuing to get a lot of love in the chat. So this is, again, a testament to how powerful your commentary and testimonials and dialogue has been over this past hour. So again, just a huge thank you to Eboni, to Nefertiri, to Sara, to our very own Deatrice for moderating this discussion. And on behalf of myself, Delisha Wiles, the co-lead for REAC, all of the members of REAC, especially Adam Mitchell, who really cultivated this idea and brought it to fruition, as well as the leadership and all of the DOA staff. We just want to thank all three of you for really leaning into this conversation today. This discussion, it has been recorded and will be shared not only with the panelists, but also with our staff who either want to watch it again or were unable to join. If there are no other questions or no comments, we certainly want to let people get back to their Thursday afternoon. But again, thank you so much. And I don't know if anybody else from REAC or Shelley wanted to chime in really quickly, but that's all I got. Thank you, ladies, so much.
just to say thank you. I am blown away. I am blown away by how open and honest you all were today. And, I hope we try every day to get better. We know how much of an economic impact we have on this community, and we want to make sure that economic impact is felt by everyone. And so I just, want to say thank you, and I hope that we can be worthy of this work and continue to drive the airport in the right direction. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, I'm sorry, Ashley Franklin, I missed your question, and you have your hand raised too. She had asked if any of the Eboni, Nefertiri, or Sara, if you offer internship opportunities for the Philly youth. Sorry for missing that, Ashley.
Yeah, I was a little slow in responding in the chat, so I don't know if my response correlated with Ashley's question. But yes, we have internships. We prefer college age interns as opposed to high school, but we definitely have opportunities in the summer.
So for us, our internships actually do cover high school as well as college. The deadline actually closed for the internship. However, I'll just say this: if you have people, I'm a proponent of young people. What I do all the time in my private life, I'm lifting up young people because I have a young Black man who is a part of that. But if you do have someone that's interested, because I know one of our partners still has their process open and we're helping place, I'm going to put my email in the chat and shoot me an email. And as long as they're ready to go, I'll definitely connect them. The great news, there's like this pandemic is a double-edged sword. So the great news is the partner that I'm thinking, their opportunity is a virtual opportunity. And so it doesn't matter where they are, but it's still, great opportunity for learning and mentorship and guidance. So.
And the mayor's office has opportunities. So Jonathan, please feel, at liberty to pursue, the dialogue channels in terms of what opportunities there are at the mayor's office.
It'd be my pleasure too. Awesome. Let me take another quick look at the chat. Again, a lot of love being shown, which is great to see. Well deserved. I think we're good, and it is exactly 3 p.m. So kudos to all for powerful and time sensitive responses.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Absolutely.
again.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you all.
JT, I'll send you the recording as soon as we come out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate that.
No problem. You got it.
Nefertiri.
She looked like you worked her hard, right?
Or maybe she's stuck. I think she's stuck.
Nefertiri has been a super panelist today. She was on
okay. You have had others.
Yeah, she was on the panel earlier with the mayor and the president of Temple University, the head coach of the basketball and football teams. I think it started at 11, so I marvel at the grind. It's very impressive.
Well, thanks again, guys. If I can do anything to support what you're doing, please let me know. Delisha, you're over HR, right?
You're on mute, Delisha.